Welcome to Conversations from the Edge of Consciousness. I'm your host, Christine Madera. For me, and possibly for you, the inner world of consciousness has always been much more real and way more fun than the so-called real material world. Growing up, I thought I was alone in this, but I'm not. There are a lot of us, and far too many have no one to talk to who shares this experience. I've been lucky to cultivate a community of friends who love to talk about the energies, ideas, and vibrations that are pushing the edges of our own consciousness, as well as our collective consciousness. In Conversations from the Edge, we share our conversations with you. Welcome to Conversations from the Edge. This is your host, Christine Madera, and we are back today with Claudia Navone. And Claudia was born in Florence, Italy, and she started her career as a ballerina and then became a fashion editor and a director of really cool publications like Elle and Harper's Bazaar. And she had a powerful spiritual awakening in 2006 that moved her to a completely different path, a very spiritual path. And she outlines that in her novel, The Shapeshifter, A Tale from Glitter to Light. Claudia is also a mentor and teacher of the Divine University and will soon be launching a new spiritual platform called In Spirit. And Claudia has a column called Simply Consciousness on Thrive Global, where she discusses the mechanisms of consciousness that to help readers increase awareness and self-realization. And she also interviews really cool people like Greg Braden, who I would love to talk to Greg Braden. Welcome, Claudia. It's wonderful to have you back.
Thank you very much, Christine. Thank you for having me back once more.
Well, it's always really interesting to talk with you. And prior to us starting to record our conversation, we almost launched into an unrecorded conversation of something that we both really value and trust and believe in and follow that's really counter to what we are taught to do. And that is the issue of having preferences. And included in preferences are opinions and judgments and all kinds of other things that are us asserting our own will that can block the flow of spirit and block the flow of energy. And it's just so much fun to talk with somebody else who has a similar experience of that.
Yeah. Well, I must be very honest and share with you and with whoever is listening that I had to learn in the hard way about this, because before my awakening, before really understanding about topics like that with the whole of my consciousness, I used to be absolutely driven by wanting and desires. My life was all about wanting and desires. And sometimes I could semi-manifest them, and sometimes I couldn't. And I was going crazy if I could not have what I wanted, have all my wantings satisfied. I would not be very happy about it. And I used to make my life very difficult with that. And I really had to bash my head against the wall many, many, many times with that, till one day, finally, with the help of my teacher, Koala, of the Enlightened Masters, I understood the deep spiritual truth about this.
You know, the way that I've understood it too, because people might have different experiences of this, is for me, every time I had an opinion, a preference, a judgment, some sort of assertion of that mental thought force will, I would feel yucky. But whenever I was in that place of just letting everything happen and being in the flow of things happening, I would feel good. And yet everything I'd ever been taught, particularly as an adult, like as a kid, you're expected to get your grades and go to school. There's not much, you don't get to choose very much within that. And so it wasn't quite as much of a problem then, but once you become an adult, like, what do you want to do, out in the world for money? What is it that you want in a relationship? What is it? There's all these decisions that you are supposed to make so that you can know when something good happens to you because it matches what you think you want, which of course that doesn't really work. But it got much harder as an adult because there was so much pressure to have some form of preference on opinions and judgments and weigh in on things. And every time I got in that space, it was like all my energy went away. And it was kind of like what you were saying. It's just, that kind of, it sucks up your energy, and it cuts off your spiritual power and your spiritual flow. And, with all of this energy of desire and of wanting. And there's a lot made of this, and I'm just so excited to hear your story about it too. So how, like, when you found this new teaching, how did it change your life?
Well, I mean, it is something that really did not happen in 1 second. So even when I
Hmm.
discovered the deeper spiritual truth about this, I went through a big process with it that lasted a long time and is
Hmm.
still lasting now, I guess. Of course, now I am very trained about this. So
Hmm.
if I have it, it's little small wanting or desire somewhere, I can easily catch myself and let go of it very, very quickly because I
Hmm.
learned a lesson. And also, since my awakening, since I came back to Europe, not knowing at all what the next part of my life was going to be like, because, I left behind all of my previous life, basically.
Hmm.
And I started from zero again in this new spiritual life. So I did not have any choice. And that was really the training that the enlightened masters has chosen for me, to
Hmm.
have no idea about what was in front of me, so that I could not have any preferences because I just had no idea, basically. And so slowly, I learned to trust, and it
Uh-huh.
wasn't so easy. It was not easy in the beginning, I have to admit to that.
Hmm.
But I was, when you're like forced in the corner and you either sink or you swim,
Yes.
basically. So that was what they did to me, because they knew that my mind was really strong. And so my mind needed to be broken.
Hmm.
And that's how they broke me. They broke me, asking me to give up, to give away everything I had from before,
Wow.
starting again from zero, building
Hmm.
my reality again from zero, just trusting that, without knowing anything, without any kind of wanting and desires, any kind of preferences, small miracles could happen to me every day.
Hmm.
And that is what I did experience. I did experience the beauty of living in the moment, the beauty of not knowing anything, but having everything that I needed coming to me. So
Hmm.
it's like it's even more than just letting go of wanting and desire. It's really learning to live, to adjust, to live in a totally different way from what I knew from before. I
Hmm.
mean, in a normal life, when we go to school, our normal human education, it's all filled with wanting and desires. It's all,
Yes.
it really is. It's not like something we even think twice about it. For example, with beautiful clothes or shoes or objects, I mean,
Hmm.
you want to have it, don't you? I mean, you want to own this, you want to own that. Everybody wants to have a great apartment, a great
Hmm.
job. It's very, our world is also still quite material, really.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so a lot of wanting and desires can be also very material, or they can be in our relationship where we really want that man, we want to have that relationship with that person and not that other
Mm-hmm.
person. And I had a lot of that as well, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But I was ignorant because I was ignoring the spiritual truth that your soul knows that there is a divine plan, and everything that really needs to happen to you will happen to you, and you
Mm-hmm.
do not need to go and chase, you know, this chasing
Yes.
that we all do, chase this, chase that. Well, it's wonderful when you are really arriving to this spiritual truth that you don't need to chase anything,
Mm-hmm.
because everything that you need to have comes to you. And so all this wanting, all these desires, all these opinion, all these choices here and there are just becoming energetic interferences
Mm-hmm.
to what should be your divine plan. So it's really quite fascinating. I basically had to learn to live in a completely different way. I had to completely switch my consciousness.
I don't know how this works for you, but I've noticed in my life, when I'm not in that place where I need to have an opinion or and things like that, that the next little piece will come onto my radar. And it's not like I go looking for something, but it's like that divine plan, or however you want to phrase it, comes and sort of awakens this new idea or awareness, but it doesn't come from my thinking mind. It's like even having this podcast, it was 2 years prior to starting this that I had this awareness that I was going to be doing a podcast or something called Conversations from the Edge, where I was going to be talking to people about, what's at the edge of their consciousness, basically as a loose idea. And it just, it kept getting closer and it kept getting closer and kept getting closer until it was time to do it. And so sometimes I have things that are that far out, but oftentimes there are things that will come, a day or two or a week or two or a month or two before the actual thing manifests in my life. But it's not something that I go looking for. It's something that is awakened in me as an awareness, so that I'm always like then noticing, oh, this is what I would need for that podcast when it's time. And so and when I let go of my own preference and I don't do things like, oh, I'm going to do a podcast, let me think about how that's going to work and how would I want to do the marketing for that, and I don't go into thought and preference with those ideas, then I can stay in that place of flow. And it can be frustrating because that part of me really wants to, like, move forward quickly, but that's really how it works for me when I'm in that state of allowing, relaxing, and flow. How does it work for you? Do you not know until something comes up, or do you have like an idea that things are happening before they happen?
Well, what you are talking about is something that I call guidance.
Mm-hmm.
So for many, many years, I only act from my higher guidance,
Mm-hmm.
which comes either through my higher self or divine presence, or maybe comes through the enlightened masters who are my
Mm-hmm.
guides, and they are the one giving me a lot of messages as well on what needs to
Mm-hmm.
be done. So my mind obviously is there, but is very empty. Like that's why I
Mm-hmm.
never remember anything,
Me either.
because there is nothing in this mind of mine, only a lot of the guidance to come in the moment. So
Mm-hmm.
this is how I've been living. I've been learning to live. That is actually the new way that I learned. So
Mm-hmm.
not through the thinking of the mind, but with having my mind completely aligned to my heart and to my higher self, my higher guidance, or with the enlightened masters. And
Mm-hmm.
so I don't move a finger nowadays if I don't receive the guidance. It's all about the guidance. The guidance sometimes can be like, really? Do I really need to do this? But you
Yeah.
have to trust it. You
Yes.
have to trust it. So I've been learning to trust the guidance, even if I can be a bit like, do I really need to do this or go there? But the guidance is there. And then sometimes you don't know the complete truth
Oh no.
till you don't start to act
Mm-hmm.
upon something. And when you're starting to act upon something, then the guidance, then everything gets revealed. So I'm looking back. I remember when the Enlightened Masters gave me the guidance to write my first book.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even want to do it. I didn't want to do it. But then I did it. And now thinking back is like, oh my God, can you imagine if I didn't do it? Because it's been so important to write that book. So, like all things like that. So I know better now
Mm-hmm.
than don't trust the guidance. I always trust the guidance.
And a lot of people that I know, and this is actually a fairly common thing, even among people who aren't all that spiritual, they'll get some kind of intuitive guidance. And as soon as they get the intuitive guidance, then they go back in thinking mind. And I would do that as well because I thought I was supposed to do that. But there's the difference between getting intuitive guidance or going to your intuition, like when nothing's working that your mind's trying to figure out, and then pulling
Yeah.
in some form of guidance and then going right back into the thinking mind, which is really a strong pattern that we've just learned to have, that if our mind knows what it wants to do, it does it. And it's only when the mind gets completely wigged out and doesn't know what to do that it's willing to hear the guidance. And then you take the guidance and the mind's like, oh, that's what we're doing. And it jumps right back in. But it's a real art and it takes a lot of practice to receive the guidance. And then, unless it's something to act on right in that moment, and sometimes it is, but often, it's guidance like this is what's going to be happening. Like you writing your book, it was like, okay, so if I'm receiving that guidance and I'm writing the book from guidance and I am doing that from guidance as opposed to going and searching the internet for a class on how to write a book, or the 10 ways to write a book, going back into the mind, like that's a real delicate balance and it takes a while to learn that. But that's really one of the keys, I think, moving forward as we're being asked more and more to let go of old habits and patterns, including old thoughts and preferences, and to be more awake and aware in the moment so we have more of that experience of guidance and flow.
Well, guidance only happens in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
So guidance doesn't really happen for something that you have to do in 10 years. Guidance, I mean, it might happen for something that you have to go through in 1 month or in 2 months, but mainly guidance happens in the moment. Now, to have clear guidance, you have to have a very clear energy.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the biggest teachings that I received, for example, from the Divine University, was, about really being clear in my energy. So really, the only thing I have to do is to be responsible for my own energy and keep my
Mm-hmm.
energy very clean. Once my energy is very clean, when my chakras are super aligned, super expanded, super, bright and illumined and activated,
Mm-hmm.
my eternal flame, the same, I'm building my pillar, all these different elements of our body of light. When I'm really clear like that, then my guidance should be crystal clear.
Mm-hmm.
And you can absolutely trust it, and that is really how I've been living for the past 8-9 years. In this way, the only thing I make sure daily is that my energy is very clear, and then everything else is easy, like everything happens, I'm in tune. I just do it. But I train myself with a lot of discipline
Mm-hmm.
to be this way. It didn't happen overnight,
Oh, yeah.
because you have to integrate the higher
Yes.
part of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And you cannot just pretend to be an avatar in 1 second flat, because it just doesn't happen that way. So, we have to work at it like with any other normal job, no, on earth. So even when you are on a spiritual path, what we need to take care of is our energy, to have a clear
Yes.
energy. And once we have a clear energy, then every day we can integrate more of our higher self, our divine presence, and really empower ourselves to be the beings that we are. And what does an empowered being do that is different from a being that is not yet truly empowered? It is the guidance, the clear guidance. That's what it is. That is what is the most empowering things in the world, is to have this clear guidance, so that you know in every moment what you are supposed to do, where are you supposed to go, what are you supposed to say. All of this, that is true power. When you know, and when you do this, you're helping yourself and you're helping a lot of other people. It's like a win-win situation with our beautiful guidance. That is what we call the true empowerment on our beautiful spiritual journey, is our guidance. And to be able to surrender to this higher guidance that we all can obtain, we have to surrender. We have to surrender to our preferences.
Yes.
We have to surrender to our desire, to our wantings. That is not higher guidance. When you want, when you chase, it's not higher guidance, and you are making your life more difficult. Let it go and surrendering is the most important thing.
It is, because I know, like, when I'm in that state of surrender and that everything flows and everything feels good. And I know we've all been taught generally that, you've got to forge our own path and do all this stuff and have our preferences and create from there, or else we're not a powerful being. However, in my experience, when you are actually in that state of surrender, you get everything that you truly desire. Like, your life really feels good. And we have this kind of template that if we surrender our own desires and our own preferences and our own opinions and thoughts and that kind of stuff, that then it's like we're imprisoned. But everything that you truly desire on that deep part of you, that where you're totally aligned with your higher self and your soul, and life feels really good, happens when you're in that state of surrender and you are living that life that flows to you, not when you're trying to create something from your mind, which always puts you into conflict, because then you're always in conflict with your heart. And that is inherently, a recipe for, you might get the physical thing that you desire, like you might get the fancy car, you might get the person that you're wanting to be with, and you might get the big job, but it's not going to make you happy and satisfied and sing on that inner level, because it's not what you truly desire. It's just, something that you think that you want. And so there's a reward in there for being in surrender, and for surrendering your preferences, and allowing that larger part of you to begin to organize your life on your behalf. It's like everything that you ever wanted that you didn't know that you wanted begins to flow to you.
Well, I mean, we are forging our way in life in a
Mm-hmm.
different way. And also, what I would say is that I know that every single being that belongs to our beautiful humanity has a dream in
Mm-hmm.
their hearts. Everybody has a heart dream. And when you learn to live in this surrender, you may create this heart dream, this heart dream that maybe you have been pushing away because you thought that life could never give you this, because your mind is telling you, give up that dream, stop dreaming, and get on with this and that. But I bet that every single person has a heart dream. And every single person can manifest this heart dream, but you really need to let go all of your mind ideas about this. And for example, what I've been achieving now in my life, so I had a very glamorous life before, but this glamorous life somehow wasn't making me very happy. Now my life, it's not unglamorous, I have to tell you. It still has elements of glamour, but it's a life of absolute freedom. While before I was not free because I was filled with attachments to everything. And now I live a life of absolute freedom because I have no attachments. I'm not really attached to everything that I used to be attached to before. And so I am free. I feel free. I feel free, and I really live my life as the sovereign being that I am, and that everybody is. Everybody is a sovereign being. And I don't have anybody telling me what to do or where to go. Or, I live guided by my higher consciousness, and without all of these attachments, and my freedom, it's so precious. And yes, of course, I still like beautiful things. And I don't see that you can not be both spiritual and loving beautiful things. I still love beautiful things, but I'm not attached to them. And I feel very grateful when I can buy myself now something gorgeous to wear, or it's a treat. It's wonderful, and I love it because beautiful things have high vibration.
Yes, they
and
do.
there is nothing wrong in wanting to live in a beautiful apartment, and have beautiful things, and have a beautiful home. There is nothing wrong with that. But what are the traps that you have to go through to get all these things? Maybe there is another way where you can live a wonderful life, have everything that you need, but in the same times you are not chasing it, and it's this cutting of the chase which gives you so much peace, because then really God, the family of light, the divine plan, arrange everything in your life so that you can have everything that you need. And that's the beauty of it, when you finally realize you have everything that you need, and you can live in this freedom, and in this peace, and you are not obsessed with everything, with having more and more and more and more, because that is what's happening in our society. Everybody wants more and more and more and more and more of this and more of that, and there is all the chasing that is going on, and that is very tiring, very tiring. All that energy that people put into achieving this, achieving that, while you can achieve everything you need without chasing anything. That is the beauty of when you get the guidance, basically, and you let go of your preferences.
And I read something recently that really demonstrated to me what I had experienced before, because I had had a concussion a couple years ago at this point, and for a few months I could not think. Like, there was every time the synapses in my brain were firing in thought, to have a through line of thought, it hurt, so I couldn't do it. So I could just sit in awareness, and people would be like, well, if
Wow.
you're not thinking, what are you doing? And I'm like, well, you're just in that, you're like in the space between the synapses, because the synapses don't actually touch. They kind of fire with one another so that you're more likely to jump from one to another. I'm not saying this exactly scientifically properly, but you can get the idea that, we have all of these connections that are unconnected physically, that have a sort of energetic pulse that goes from one to another. And when you're in thought, you're running through the synapses, you're running information through, it's jumping right from one to another, it's making these connections, it's organizing your energy in thought. And when I was in this state of awareness, I was like in the space between the synapses, where there was no electrical activity that I could feel between those things. So it
Wow.
wasn't completing thoughts, but I was in that spaciousness of awareness, and I could fully function. It's not like if you're not thinking, you're not functioning. You can totally function outside of thought. Now, it's hard to balance a checkbook outside of thought, because that requires a certain kind of thought. And so there are certain things that do require some form of, intentional thinking. When I add something, what's the process of that? When I subtract something, what's the process of that? But in awareness, I was fully functional in every aspect of my life, except for things like math. And it was a beautiful state to be in, because everything really just flows in that state. And so for me, when I explain this to people, that if you can imagine, instead of being on a super highway of a particular thought running in a direction, if you were in a place like in the sitting between thoughts, sitting in that gap between the synapses, sitting in the gap between thoughts, sitting in the intersection between two roads that aren't connected, that's the kind of spaciousness you can have if you begin to cultivate non-thought or non-prosecution of thought, where you're not connecting thoughts with thoughts and forming opinions and forming preferences, and then thinking about those preferences, and then trying to plan about how to bring about those preferences. If you just sit in that spaciousness,
Wow.
everything you need actually organizes
Wow.
itself for you.
Yes, that's an amazing experience that you had. I mean, obviously, it was supposed to be this way.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
what I can tell you is that on the other side, nothing is linear.
yeah.
So, you see, the human mind is very linear. 2 and 2 is 4, blah, 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 da, da, da.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other side, how they do things on the other side, nothing is linear. And
Mm-hmm.
so anything can happen.
Yeah.
That's why you can have the most incredible miracles happening to you, the most
Mm-hmm.
amazing events, the most incredible helps come from here and from there, because nothing is linear from the other side. So you see, here we act in a very, very different way. And you have been explaining it very well when you were talking just a second ago.
Mm-hmm.
You were explaining how really things are done on the other side. Is this not a linear way? So you see, everybody here thinks, oh my God, I've got to work at this job 12 hours to make the money, to pay the rent, to do this,
Uh-huh.
and all of that. But that's human thinking. On the other
Mm-hmm.
side, you do not need to work 12 hours, because somehow, if you trust, if you let go, if you have faith, if you are abandoning everything that you think
Mm-hmm.
is your preferences or your ideas about things, maybe something will come completely unexpected that will
Yes.
support you
Mm-hmm.
financially, for example. Like, you must know that when I stopped my previous life to completely enter in this new spiritual path, I
Mm-hmm.
had not 1 cent to my name.
Mm-hmm.
I had nothing financially. But from left, right, and center, all these amazing people appeared that helped me with that. And
Yeah,
I had
it
no idea
does.
that this was going to happen, but that was one of the things I needed to trust. And I received so much help. Like I had clients coming out of nowhere, doing
Mm-hmm.
all of my sessions, like people, like they would come like magic. And I had, beautiful friends that helped me. They were very generous with me, and I made it through. I made it through a very tough, for example, financial part,
Mm-hmm.
and that was one of my greatest fear, for example, when I left all my fashion life
Mm-hmm.
behind, where obviously I was earning a stupid amount of money. I was also spending a stupid amount of money. So that's why I had not
Mm-hmm.
really savings,
Mm-hmm.
and all of that. So yeah, that was a huge lesson, but you have no idea how much help I received from others. I mean, it was just incredible,
Well, and it
and
happens in lots of ways too, because when I I met my husband, I was living in a religious community, and it was a religious community of almost all women. I
wow,
was not on the lookout for anybody. I was uninterested. I never liked dating. Like I was just not interested. And he shows up like not out of the blue. It's just the brother of one of the nuns where I was living, and she says, "Oh, you'll like him. He's weird like you." So I thought, well, I don't know how to evaluate that, but okay. And so he shows up, and like within 2 weeks, he had heard, and he didn't tell me until later, but he had heard a voice that told him to ask me to marry him. And so he comes in,
wow,
gets down on one knee, and asks me to marry him because he never questions. So if he gets a voice like that, it happens immediately. It's something you do now. And then I heard this voice that said this, because he really took me by surprise. And the voice said, "This is the best thing that could ever happen to you. It's the best thing you could do with your life." And I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" I'm like, one, I don't know this guy. Two, he's like 30 years older than me. And three, are you kidding me? And the voice was like, "Nope, we're not kidding you. This is the best thing you can do." I'm like, "Oh my God." So I said, "Okay, I'll marry you eventually." But,
wow,
and
wow.
because I knew
But
that, because I'd had that voice
no, but
before, you
yes,
follow it.
yeah, yes, because also, like, he was really truly sent to you,
Mm-hmm.
because apparently each one of us has a divine partner, but
Yeah.
sometimes we don't
Okay.
recognize it, or we push him away
Mm-hmm.
because of our mind, because of our memories, the karma that you may have with that person.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at everyone through the Christed consciousness,
Mm-hmm.
and you recognize that really has been sent to you, and you say yes, and you trust that, as you have done with him,
Mm-hmm.
then wow, you can really have a divine relationship with someone. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, and you
It's
don't have
really
to get on a whole
wonderful.
bunch of dating sites to find somebody. Like,
No,
when you're
that's
open,
that's
life
wonderful.
happens. And
Yeah,
so, and it happens in all kinds of ways. And so I kind of give everybody the challenge to, give up some preference and see what happens with that. All right,
yeah,
Claudia, is
yeah.
there anything else you wanted to say about this before we wrap up?
I wish for everyone that has been listening to this wonderful conversation that we had today to really trust this, to
Mm-hmm.
really trust that there is a beautiful plan for their life, and their souls knows all about it, but the mind doesn't. And
Mm-hmm.
so trust this, and may you be blessed with all the gorgeous miracles of the divine plan that is there for you right now, for each one of you.
Amen. All right. So you can find a way to get in touch with Claudia on the website conversationsfromtheedge.net, and you scroll down to her bio, and there's all kinds of links under there. But is there any particular place that you want to direct people to today?
Well, maybe my Instagram, because it's a long process, this website, and it's still not up. And
Okay.
And so I would say my Instagram, I give a
Okay.
lot of messages, little messages on the Instagram. But if you want to get in touch with me, you can leave me a message, whatever. Yeah, that would be the best at this moment in time.
All right. And eventually when you have your website, we'll add that to your bio link and people can connect with you
Great.
there.
I can't,
So
I, I, I can't wait, Christine. That would be the day. Like,
I know
I
we've
have a
been talking
meeting.
about this for 6 months,
Oh
your
my
website.
God, I know, but you know what? It's not as easy because it's not just the
Yeah.
website. It will have all of my courses that people can buy
Mm-hmm.
there. There's a
Yeah.
lot of stuff in there, and it's a lot of work,
Yes.
and it takes time, and I can't hurry it up, and that's it,
Yes.
basically.
It is what it is. I know.
It is
All
what
right.
it is. Yeah.
Well, it was wonderful talking with you again today, and it's always fun talking with you. So I look forward to the next time we connect.
Absolutely, Christine. Same here, and yeah, it was always a wonderful exchange, and I hope that can help. All the people that are going to listen to our conversations.
This is your host, Christine Madera. I hope you've enjoyed this conversation from the edge of consciousness. You can find all our conversations at conversationsfromtheedge.net. You'll also find links to schedule a private conversation with me or any of my friends, as well as tools to help you expand your own consciousness and explore what's possible for you outside the boundaries of your current perceptions. Feel free to use this podcast to start your own conversation by sharing it with friends, on social media, in your blog, or even in your own podcast. And as always, live the adventure of pushing your own edge. It's the most amazing adventure there is.